From a strictly biological perspective, masturbation is a naturally occurring part of human development. Stripped of moral judgments, it is simply a physiological process the human body is designed to execute. When self-stimulation occurs, it triggers a specific chemical reaction. The body releases a cocktail of hormones, primarily dopamine, which creates the sensation of pleasure, and oxytocin, which promotes feelings of relief and connection. These chemicals actively counteract cortisol, the hormone responsible for stress. This internal chemistry leads to measurable physical benefits, including immediate stress relief, a reduction in physical pain, and improved sleep quality. In a vacuum, this physiological state is perfectly balanced. The act itself is a healthy biological function, meaning the risk of addiction arises entirely from the specific stimuli we choose to pair it with. Digital pornography disrupts this natural baseline. For the first time, we have instant, limitless, and frictionless access to hyper-stimulating sexual content at any moment. Historical myths suggested that pornography consumption would directly damage the reproductive system, causing physical erectile dysfunction. Clinical data, however, reveals a much more complex reality. This data visualization, based on a study of over 3,500 men, shows that physical causes are actually poor predictors of sexual dysfunction. Instead, severe erectile dysfunction and relationship dissatisfaction are most consistently predicted by psychological factors, specifically spikes in anxiety and depression. As the chart morphs into the underlying anatomy, the reason for this becomes clear. Modern porn bypasses the physical reproductive system entirely to target the emotional reward center of the brain. This addiction functions as a covert hijacking of the brain's psychological circuitry, using digital stimuli to manipulate the internal systems meant for reward and relief. A critical threshold exists between a habit and a compulsion. A habit is an enjoyable routine, whereas a compulsion functions as a desperate escape from reality. That escape is usually initiated by a specific psychological trigger. It might be intense loneliness after a bad day, unresolved stress at work, or deep, persistent boredom. Seeking immediate relief from these negative emotions, the brain builds a high-speed pathway to the fastest available remedy. This flowchart shows the neural route effectively bypassing healthy coping mechanisms to reach an immediate chemical hit. Because digital porn offers unnatural levels of stimulation, it floods the system with a massive dopamine surge. That chemical flood cements the neural pathway, locking this automatic behavior into the brain's architecture. Once this wiring is complete, the motivation changes. The individual is no longer seeking pleasure. The nervous system is acting on a compulsion just to survive emotional discomfort. The relief is temporary. In the immediate aftermath of the act, the brain experiences a severe and rapid dopamine crash. This biological drop produces heavy psychological fallout, intense feelings of guilt, a sense of shame, and a powerful instinct to hide the behavior. This secrecy creates isolation, and that isolation acts as a brand new, highly potent negative emotion. This circular diagram illustrates the shame cycle. The dopamine crash leads to shame, which functions as the exact same trigger we saw earlier. The brain immediately craves another hit to numb the very pain the cycle just produced. As dopamine receptors become numb to the stimulation, the brain requires more extreme content and higher frequency to achieve the same numbing effect. The cycle accelerates, pulling the user inward like a vortex. This inability to stop is the functional output of a recursive biological loop, an anatomical system trapped by its own internal feedback. Reclaiming control requires targeted clinical interventions designed to hack the underlying neurological cycle. Willpower alone rarely succeeds against such a deep chemical circuit. One primary tool used to decouple a trigger from the compulsive action is a technique called urge surfing. This graph tracks a craving's lifespan. Like an ocean wave, it gathers momentum, peaks, and falls naturally. Instead of fighting it, the user objectively observes the physical sensation. By tracking the urge until it dissipates, the cycle is interrupted. Successfully riding out the urge teaches the brain that it does not have to complete the loop to survive the discomfort. Recovery begins by introducing friction, modifying daily routines, and using digital blockers to remove the automatic environmental triggers. The brain's demand for relief must then be rerouted toward healthy, long-term alternatives, like physical exercise or meaningful social connection. Sustaining this change often requires professional therapy to address the underlying emotional stressors that initially drove the need for escape. This process is fueled by neuroplasticity, the scientific reality that the human brain is highly adaptable and capable of physically rewiring itself to heal. While the struggle is systemic, the biological capacity to rewire these pathways remains intact. Replacing shame with clinical awareness allows for the deliberate work of rerouting the compulsion and regaining control over the mind.